So what were your thoughts on the whole situation in the walkabout in Birmingham?
Well, I think the first thing to say is massive thanks to Australia for managing to give us all this publicity of the Ashes series just beforehand. But seriously, you know, clearly we don't condone that type of incident. I think Cricket Australia dealt with it exceptionally well. I think that's all now past us. And clearly there's some lessons to be learnt and have been learnt. But you know, there were some very, very good things that did come out of it in terms of the relationship between the two sides already. Although, you know, the headline was very different, I can tell you behind the scenes was some really good discussions between the two teams as a result of that.
In the sense of?
Positive relationships of this is not how we want this series to go.
Yeah, OK. Mike, it's good, is it not, that England fans can see England players out having a drink?
Yeah, but you have to be so careful in this day and age. You only see the rugby players when you go into bars and there are cameras everywhere, and it's slightly different to when myself and Beefy used to parade around and have a few beers afterwards, but never quite as late as Beefy. But you know, it was one of those things where you never really stepped over that line. You'd have a drink with them, and it never really got to that ever that I can ever remember. And there were, you know, some serious nights out when you used to get together and have a drink. And you've got to remember, we used to have a drink after the day's play as well in the changing room. So we got to know the guys, you know, really well. And that's probably one of the sad things they don't do as much these days, because something like that would never have happened in our day, I don't think.
David Richardson from the ICC was on Test Match Special last week saying this is not necessarily the last Champions Trophy. What does the ECB feel about the scheduling of the Champions Trophy and its viability?
I think, Mark, over the last 5 or 6 years, we've been pushing ICC very hard to reduce the number of global events. One of the issues going back a number of years is there used to be one global event every 4 years. With the introduction of 2020 cricket, with the thought of a World Test Championship, that's already 3 forms of the game. So 3 forms of the game in a 4-year cycle, we believe, with a pinnacle for each of those forms of the game, is the right way forward. At the moment, we're playing 4 global events in 4 years, and what that does is it condenses the whole schedule. And, you know, there's been a lot of talk about the volume of cricket, and a lot of it is because we have to take out normally about an 8 or 9 week block of cricket around the world to be able to play a global event. Now, the global events are very important because that's what funds the 104 member nations of ICC. You know, it's all very well for England and India and Australia, who could probably afford not to have those global events, but the money that arises from the Champions Trophy is critical to the likes of Scotland, Holland, Ireland, and even so to New Zealand, West Indies, and some of the smaller of the 4 members.
Sky are going to have a dedicated Ashes channel. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a wonderful initiative. It just shows how big the Ashes series is, both at home and away. And the reason why we're playing home and away, Mark, is that when we had the Schofield Review back in 2006, both ourselves and Australia looked at it and said, this is absolutely stupid. We play an Ashes series in Australia immediately prior to the World Cup every 4 years. Neither of us are going into World Cups properly prepared as a result. So we had to get out of that cycle. That meant the back-to-back this year, and then we'll go back to a 4-year cycle starting in 2015. So I think we're really excited by it, really excited by the coverage that is already taking place. I just think it'll be a great summer of cricket and a great winter.
10-year anniversary of T20 cricket. Sorry against Middlesex at the Oval. I remember I was there. It was a fantastic start. It
was full house almost. Yeah. It was amazing, and I think we're now seeing the fruits from that. It was a, you know, great inception. We all used to play 20 over cricket at school, so that's what we all used to play. Slightly different concept now. It's been a tremendous you know, fillip for cricket, you know, the sort of white, middle-aged, sort of 40, 50-year-old retired person who watched cricket. I think now it's changing enormously with T20. You're getting families, you're getting wives and girlfriends coming along, and different sort of people to watch the game. And what was very interesting is it's 10 years on, and this year at the Investec Test match at Lords against New Zealand, we had over 2,000 under-16s coming along to watch Test cricket. So it's done what we hoped it would do, which was get a different type of audience, but also within that different type of audience, perhaps drag a few into, say, the 50-over game and Test cricket, which it seems to have done.
So what are you doing to that end? I know you'll have plans. You know, you're capturing people maybe who never watched cricket before. How are you trying to introduce them to the longer forms of the game once they're in your grasp?
Well, I think you know, through Facebook, through Twitter, through the 12th Man, which is a supporters club, is, you know, where we do get some sort of ability to communicate with them. We actually go through that and we push out the matches when they're on and say, you know, if you'd like to come along and watch, please do.
What came out very loud and clear to us was that people wanted T20 cricket as regularly as possible on Friday nights, Friday night being the popular night. So that's what we're introducing in 2014. They wanted regular dates for county championship cricket. That's introduced in 2014.
Regular start dates.
Regular start dates.
Yep.
And then they want the... there was a view that there is very little difference, and it surprised us, between 40-over cricket and 50-over cricket in terms of the popularity of the spectator. So he said if there's not a spectator demand differential between 40-over and 50-over, we should mirror the international game, and that has to be right for the development of international players. India accounts for over 80% of the population, stroke TV audience, stroke commercial revenues of the game. Now, clearly when you have that imbalance, there's always going to be a view that that person is very, very powerful. I mean, if you take New Zealand and Sri Lanka, they absolutely totally rely on a tour by India to generate their revenues. You know, for us in England, we are not so reliant, but even for us, the value of our India tour next year far outweighs the Ashes tour, far outweighs it.
You've got to remember Pugas, who was running cricket prior to India for about 50, 60, 70 years. It was England and Australia, so they might think it's their time to have a go. But we just got to, as David said, make sure it's run in a proper manner.
Yeah.
We don't often mention the women's and girls and disabilities sometimes these days because we like to think our game's the one game and it's totally inclusive. And so when we talk about cricket, we talk about women's and girls and disabilities all in one, not just the men's and boys' game. So the women's and girls' game has been tremendous. It's been a huge boost for us over the last 10 years, really. It's just gone up and up, helped by A Chance to Shine and the work they do in the primary schools. And the clubs have now come on board, and obviously we do encourage clubs if they want to have new facilities, and they should be running either disabilities or women's and girls. And also during this particular part of our Sport England plan over the next 4 years, we're going for a huge push into disabilities cricket to try and broaden the base. We're joined with the Lawrence Taverners to try and run this through the cricket board. So hopefully by the end of the 4 years we'll have 39 cricket boards with a disabilities programme that's been up and running and working, and we'll have a huge base of disability cricketers which can then feed into the already very strong bodies that we have throughout disabilities cricket.
I think we're done for the day, so thank you to Nolan Partners and thank you to Bloomberg. Thank you to you for coming, but most of all, thanks to David and to Mike for their time this morning.